Folks, we can change districts. We can make it happen, but it's going to take getting outside our comfort zone. I'm in this. I am all in. In 8 weeks, ballots drop. Forget about November 8th. The election is in 8 weeks, folks. There is no time other than right now. So let's get it done. And it is my honor, my privilege. I love working with him, and he's been a great ally in the legislature. His preferred pronoun, you all are freaking out now, is super mega colossal. But my colleague, my friend, Representative Jesse Young, we're going to get it done on the 26th.
I wasn't sure he was going to be able to fit in that preferred pronoun, but that was the best intro ever. I think we should start pushing back. Never play defense. Let's get on the offense. They don't get to define our terms. They don't get to define our language well. It is a pleasure, a true pleasure to be here in front of all of you today. We do have some fights on our hand, but I do believe that we can come out and prevail. Marcus and Tony, thank you for being there for us. I wish Craig were still here, because when Craig came up, he's very humble, but I think he feels a little bit defeated. Craig's not defeated. I look at Craig as on the front line for us too. He's not doing it in the political arena, but he stood up for his liberty, and in doing so was a proxy for us, for our liberty, for our individual ways of life. And that's why I support that guy so strongly. You want to know what's interesting that we can do in the Senate? Drew McEwen is a master at budgets. He's been leading on the Appropriations Committee for a long time. I've got an idea. One of the things, if we can't ever beat Inslee and stop their fines of $130,000+ on someone like Craig for that business, you know what we could do, Drew? Why don't we put a special proviso of let's say $1 million, however much any business has been fined, let's carve out a little section in the budget, dump some money in there, and the only people that can apply for that money would be people that were effective negatively through the governor's L&I mandate, so that they can get the money back. That's the type of stuff. We got to get creative, and we got to start finding ways to get that money back, so these guys that stood up for us aren't hurting. Where there's a will, there's a way. We can play. I just don't like playing defense. Folks, you know what what's on the line here. We're only 4 seats down in the Senate. For all intents and purposes, if I had chosen to stay in my House seat, I'd be coasting in at 55% right now. But I chose to take on the big race. I chose to go and try to take this seat back that was once ours and restore it so that we've got a broader conservative coalition out here in Kitsap County. And we start to do that, then all of a sudden, we're playing offense into 23rd. We're going with posture into the 23rd. And we've got candidates like Paige and Janelle, and then we're taking back all of Kitsap County. That's the goal. That's why I chose to not take it easy this year and go challenge the incumbent. Since I've been in, many of you know this, they really don't like me. I've had more money spent against me since I've been appointed to office than any other candidate. Would you like to hear the push-pull that they're running just today that I just got texted? It affects you. One of their questions says, Young has consistently opposed common sense. Keep in mind, it's a Democrat poll. So, consistently opposed all common sense gun safety measures in our state. He has voted against background checks, voted to allow domestic abusers, apparently that's you, to keep their guns, voted to allow guns in daycare centers, and voted to allow armed intimidation at election facilities and school board meetings. Folks, they're talking about you, average, everyday citizens, that they don't want to be able to go hold their public officials accountable. And what, just because you might have a concealed carry, you're no longer allowed to exercise your freedom of transparency, your rights to make sure that your kids aren't indoctrinated? And because I stood up and voted to protect your gun rights, I'm an extremist along that lines? Folks, you know what the answer to this question is. If they nix me out, who's next? You are. I'm willing to stand on the front lines and be a blight to them by being the closest conservative to Seattle in the state. And I'm happy to do that for you. Here's the next one. Jesse Young stood with counter-protesters carrying military-grade assault rifles to intimidate local teens participating in a peaceful march, joined the far-right 3%er militia at a rally, and supported a legislator accused of domestic terrorism. This is what they believe. It's not what they're selling. It's what they believe. They believe that you are all domestic terrorists. You know, that, let's see, that counter-protesters, Those people that showed up probably saved my life that day. The one time Antifa came out to my district was in June 2 years ago. All of the police, all of our first responders have their MO down. They never just do one event in a local area alone. They'll always stage 3 or 4 events. All of our first responders know this. And what they do is they coordinate with your local high schools. That's where the nexus to these kids and saying I wanted to intimidate kids. I got a call. I called the chief of police, called the mayor. They said Antifa's coming. What they'll do is they'll get the kids out first, so it looks like a peaceful event. Then they'll insert their thugs into the event. Then, once they've got these multiple events going, what they do is they will send their lieutenants around to the different spots, and they'll start to probe. Which community response is lacking? Where do we have the greatest opportunity to make headway with something? I stood on the corner, counter-protested them there. I was concealed carry, but I wasn't openly slinging my AR. At one point, I felt like maybe I should have, because when those thugs came after me, the chief of police didn't do anything. He simply handed out bottles of water. My wife and my kids have never been more scared. I mean, the talks that I had to have with my family after that event, I stood on that corner for 13 hours. That night, while we were there at the corner of that intersection, after the majority of the crowds had left, pockets of kids would come every half an hour. We found out that the local high school was offering extra credit to any kid that would make sure that they could outlast Rep. Young at the corner. We stood there for that long because we knew, and I serve on the Public Safety Committee. We know what they do. We needed to show a presence. They have never come back, but you know what didn't get reported in the newspaper? How on the corner of Point Fosdick and Olympic, there's First Citizens Bank. They don't report how they found 2 cans full of gasoline stored behind the bushes at First Citizens Bank. Have any of you ever woken up out of bed in the morning and said, you know what, I'm going to go fill up 2 random cans of gasoline and just go drop them off behind the bushes at a bank? You think that Antifa isn't coming for us? You think that this isn't coordinated? It's all coordinated. It's coordinated from that local level and those agenda-driven groups out of Seattle all the way up to the legislature. There was an attack at the former Wells Fargo Bank across the highway there that they responded to shut that down. And then the very next day, think of how coordinated this had to be. The very next day, I was formally submitted for a Robert Mueller-style investigatory ethics board review down at the legislature under the notion that I was leading an armed contingent to threaten my own constituents. Conveniently, they strung that event along until just after the primary. It didn't affect the primary, thankfully. And then they vindicated me and said, oh yeah, Rep. Young had nothing to do with any of all that stuff. But I'll tell you what, if folks like you, if folks like Marcus hadn't have been there to protect me, maybe my kids don't have a dad right now. Those guys are scary. And they are trying to push us. It's a game of go. How much real estate can we take so that we can force you to fire the first shot? And we got to be smarter than that. If you don't want to be pushed into that position, everything that everybody said is true. We need you to get out. We need some. They're kicking my ass on the door. I can't get volunteers to come out with $20 a call and knock on the door. I don't care. 3 of my kids are right now knocking on the door. If you don't want to be forced into that game of go, where they're putting you to the test, I will stand in the gap for you. But I need you for the next 8 weeks to come out and knock on doors with me. I don't want excuses. I will stand, I will fight, I will stand on the line, but I really could use some of that bodily help. Come knock on the doors with me. You want to see this guy get up and do a little dance? Watch me on the door? Man, I can flip votes. I'm good, but I sure could use some extra support. You don't even have to make the case. My kids can make a case. Within the last week, some disturbed person exposed themselves on the street to my wife. My daughter was physically chased and pursued for a couple of blocks until we were able to get someone else from another block over to come over and walk with her. I see people in here. I see some of you guys. You may not want to sell on the door. Well, come out and chaperone my kids. That's the price we're paying. I would desperately, desperately love your help. That's the price. We take this back. We get it done. This will be the front line, and then we go on the offensive. Does that sound like a game plan? All right. I love you guys. Thank you very much.
That man right there has been a man of his word. How many know that the press is a little misleading with a lot of their stories? The Kitsap Sun, from a local perspective, absolutely attacked and listened to everything the government wanted to have printed, the narrative against this gun club and against me personally. And a lot of people were buying it. I would talk to folks and they would say, oh, I know what's going on up at their gun club because I read the paper. I think Mark Twain said something about if you don't read the paper, you're uninformed, but if you read the paper, you're misinformed. At the time that it was its worst and they had come to try to shut down this gun club, Jesse Young was the only representative that would put his name on a document saying, I support that club and everything that they're doing. We need to see to it he gets in office, folks.